parents made me responsible for my sister's job quitting. Then she tried to force a car loan cosign. I was 28 years old when I finally learned a horrifying truth about my family. Love wasn't about care. It was about brutal, unyielding compliance. That shattering revelation came crashing down over a perfectly ordinary meatloaf dinner, thanks to a round of applause that ripped my world apart. For most of my life, I truly believed family was the one place you could be messy, be vulnerable, and still be safe. The one place you could actually say, "I'm tired," and hear, "We've got you." I believed in unconditional love the way some people believe in gravity. Quietly, automatically, without question. My parents fostered this illusion, painting our family as this tight-knit, supportive unit. But the truth? It was a carefully constructed facade, designed to maintain a very specific and frankly twisted power dynamic. My younger sister, Madison, had always been the golden child. Always. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't complicated, it was just reality. When we were kids, Madison would cry, and my parents would move mountains. I'd cry, and I'd be told to use my big girl voice. When she forgot her homework, my mom would rush it to school, delivering it like some sacred offering. When I forgot mine, I was simply learning responsibility. By the time we were adults, this pattern had calcified into something almost ceremonial. While I worked 2 jobs through college, waitressing at night, tutoring on weekends, Madison breezed through a communications degree funded entirely by our parents. While I scrimped and saved every single penny for a small, 1-bedroom apartment, Madison lived rent-free in their basement, endlessly finding herself. At 25, she'd held exactly 3 jobs, each lasting less than 6 months before she quit, blaming toxic environments or unsympathetic bosses. She spoke about work like it was a cruel, personal experiment being performed on her, not something you had to do to survive. That Tuesday dinner in March 2024 started like any other family ritual. Mom had made her famous meatloaf, the one she always brought out when she wanted to remind us that we were a close family. Dad was droning on about his upcoming retirement from the insurance company, a place he'd worked for 32 years, his voice a strange mix of pride and sheer exhaustion. Madison, meanwhile, picked at her food like she was doing it a favor, complaining about her current part-time job at a local boutique. "The manager actually expects me to show up on time," she whined, twirling her fork in the mashed potatoes. "And yesterday this customer was so rude because I couldn't find her size in the back. I don't get paid enough to deal with that kind of stress." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted metal. My mind flashed back to my own retail days, the customers who'd thrown receipts at my face, the managers who'd made me stay late unpaid, the nights I'd walked to my car with my feet blistered and my back aching. I'd smiled through it, always, because I had to. Rent didn't care about my stress levels. Tuition didn't pause because I was finding myself. But Madison wasn't finished. Suddenly, she stood up from the table, her chair scraping the hardwood with a dramatic, almost theatrical flourish. Her eyes were bright, not with exhaustion or sadness, but with something disturbingly like excitement. "I'm tired," she declared, looking at our parents. "I don't want to work anymore." The silence that followed lasted maybe 3 seconds. Then it happened. My parents erupted into applause. Actual clapping. My mom's face lit up like Madison had just announced she'd cured cancer. My dad beamed with pride. I sat there, frozen, my fork hovering over my plate, staring at them like I'd accidentally stepped into the wrong house. "Oh, honey," Mom gushed, clasping her hands together. "That's wonderful. You've worked so hard, and you deserve to focus on what makes you happy." Hard. Madison had worked, maybe 20 hours a week for 4 months. My fork clanged against my plate as I set it down, slowly. My chest felt tight, like the air itself had thickened, suffocating me. Dad turned to me then, that familiar, expectant expression on his face, the one that always preceded another favor I was supposed to do for Madison. "From now on," he said, his voice calm, chillingly final. You cover for her. Whatever she says, you do. The words hit me like a physical blow, a punch to the gut. Excuse me. I managed, my voice coming out smaller, far weaker than I intended. Mom tilted her head, her voice dripping with that practiced, patronizing softness. Annie, sweetie, you've always been so responsible, so capable. Madison needs time to figure out her passion. And we know you'll step up like you always do. Step up. I stared at Madison. She smiled at me, sweet, innocent, almost grateful, like she hadn't just declared my life open for assignment. Step up how? I asked, though a dark dread was already unfolding in my stomach, like a poisonous flower. Madison's voice turned syrupy. Well, I'll still need my lifestyle maintained while I explore my options. Car payments, shopping, going out with friends, you understand? It's temporary, just until I find my calling. I waited for someone to laugh. No one did. My throat went dry. I looked from Mom to Dad and back again, searching for any sign that this was a joke, a test, a weird family moment that would end with, "Just kidding!" Instead, I saw certainty, expectation, entitlement. You expect me to pay for Madison's life, I said, the words slow, deliberate, while she doesn't work. Dad's expression hardened. Whatever makes her happy, he said, like he was reading from scripture. You make good money at your marketing firm, and you don't have many expenses. It's the least you can do for family. The least I could do. After putting myself through college, working 60-hour weeks to build my career and never asking them for a single dime since I turned 18, supporting my adult sister was apparently my new job title. I excused myself early, claiming I had work to finish. Nobody noticed the way my hands trembled as I gathered my purse. They were too busy talking about Madison's freedom journey, praising her for prioritizing her mental health, acting like quitting a part-time boutique job was an act of profound bravery. I drove home in a fog, the streetlights blurring in my eyes. I told myself they'd calm down, that tomorrow, in the cold light of morning, they'd realize how utterly insane this whole thing was. The next morning, I was reviewing quarterly reports at my desk when my phone rang. Madison's contact photo filled my screen, a selfie she'd taken with my expensive camera without asking, smiling like the world owed her something. I answered with a tight, controlled, "Hello." "Annie, good news," she chirped, bright with the boundless enthusiasm of someone who'd never paid for her own mistakes. "I found the perfect car yesterday. A certified pre-owned BMW 3 Series in silver. The dealer said I have excellent taste." My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might be sick. "Madison," I said, forcing my voice to stay level, "you can't just buy a car without income." "Oh, I didn't buy it yet," she interrupted dismissively. "I picked it out, but they need a co-signer since I don't have income right now. You'll get the forms to sign. Don't delay." The casual way she said it, like she was asking me to grab milk on the way home, made my vision blur with anger. "Madison, that BMW probably costs $40,000, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts. "I'm not co-signing for a car you can't afford." The line went quiet. When she spoke again, the sweetness was gone, replaced by a sharp edge I recognized instantly from childhood. The voice she used right before she got Mom to punish me for something Madison did. "You'll sign the papers, Annie," she said. Mom and Dad already explained the arrangement. The arrangement where I become your personal ATM while you play house with your life. I whispered, heat crawling up my neck. "No." A small, dangerous pause. Then she said, low and certain, "We'll see about that." She hung up. I stared at my phone, my hands cold. Around me, the office hummed with keyboards, printers, quiet conversations. It was like the universe had decided my life could fall apart without anyone even noticing. That evening, I drove to my parents' house, determined to have a calm conversation about boundaries. Even after everything, a part of me still believed I could make them understand. I still believed they'd choose fairness if I explained it clearly enough. But the moment I walked in, I knew. All three of them were waiting in the living room, like some twisted intervention committee. Madison sat in Dad's recliner, his sacred chair, the one no one else was ever allowed to use. Mom and Dad flanked her on the couch, positioned like guards. The air was thick, tense, staged. Dad spoke first, his voice sharp with authority. "Annie, Madison told us about your conversation today. We're disappointed in your selfishness." Selfishness? The word felt unreal, like I'd walked into a scene where the roles had been swapped and nobody bothered to tell me. How is refusing to co-sign for a car she can't afford selfish? I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief. Madison rose from the chair with theatrical grace, her face already arranged into an expression of hurt and betrayal. "How can you be so cruel to your own sister?" she demanded. "After everything Mom and Dad did for you, this is how you repay them." Something in me straightened. A line I'd been stepping over my whole life suddenly lit up like a warning flare. "Everything they did for me?" I repeated, my voice shaking with a new kind of fury. "They did for you, Madison. I paid my way through college. I bought my own car. I got my own apartment." Her face tightened, and then the slap came so fast I didn't even see her arm move. Madison's palm cracked against my cheek. The sound echoed through the quiet room. My head snapped sideways, a burning heat blooming across my face. For a second, nobody moved. I lifted my hand to my mouth and felt wetness. My lip was split. Her ring had cut it. I tasted blood. "Madison," I breathed, staring at her like she was a stranger. Mom shot to her feet, not to check on me, not to yell at Madison, but to point a trembling finger at my face. "Annie Elizabeth," she snapped, her voice venomous. "Apologize to your sister right now. How dare you upset her like this?" I blinked. My cheek burned, my lip throbbed. "She just hit me," I said, my voice hollow with disbelief. "You deserved it," Dad said coldly, his eyes like ice. "Your attitude is unacceptable. Madison is going through a difficult time, and instead of supporting her, you're being selfish and cruel." Madison began to cry. Soft sobs, practiced and perfect. The performance she'd used her entire life to escape consequences. "I just want to feel normal," she sniffed. "To have nice things like other people. Annie has so much and I have nothing." "You have nothing," I said, wiping blood from my lip, "because you quit every job you get." My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady now, infused with a cold, righteous anger. "You have nothing because you've never worked for anything in your life. That's enough." Dad roared, standing abruptly. "Your duty is to support your family, not judge them. If you can't fulfill your obligations as a daughter and sister," he pointed toward the door, his face a mask of rage, "then don't ever step foot in this house again." The ultimatum hung in the air, toxic and final. I looked at their faces, my mother's fury, my father's absolute certainty, Madison's fake tears, and I realized something that made my stomach go numb. They weren't confused. They weren't emotional. They were united against me. They had chosen. I wiped my lip again, tasting metallic bitterness. My heart beat slow and heavy, like it was carrying a weight too big to name. "Fine," I said. My own calm seemed to surprise them. Mom's expression flickered, uncertain, like she'd expected screaming, begging, bargaining. "Fine," she repeated, clearly thrown off. "You want me gone?" I said, my voice quiet but clear. "I'm gone." I picked up my purse and walked toward the front door, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood. Behind me, I heard Mom's voice rise, suddenly thinner. "Annie, wait." Madison's voice cut through, sharp with false confidence. "You'll come crawling back," she called. "You always do. You can't survive without us." I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. I turned back one last time, meeting her eyes across the room. "Watch me," I said. And then I walked out into the night, with a split lip, a burning cheek, and the sickening realization that the family I'd been trying to earn had never existed at all. "You want me gone?" I said, my voice quiet but clear. I'm gone. I picked up my purse and walked toward the front door, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood. Behind me, I heard Mom's voice rise, suddenly thinner. Annie, wait. Madison's voice cut through, sharp with false confidence. You'll come crawling back, she called. You always do. You can't survive without us. I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. I turned back one last time, meeting her eyes across the room. Watch me, I said. And then I walked out into the night with a split lip, a burning cheek, and the sickening realization that the family I'd been trying to earn had never existed at all. The next morning started at 6:02 a.m. with my phone buzzing on the nightstand. I stared at it for a long moment before rolling onto my back and watching it vibrate itself into silence. Mom's name flashed across the screen, then Dad's, then Madison's. I didn't answer. 5 minutes later, it rang again and again. By the time I finished getting dressed for work, I had 14 missed calls and more voicemails than I wanted to acknowledge. I listened to the first one while brushing my teeth, toothpaste foaming uselessly as Mom's voice filled the bathroom. Annie, honey, please call me back. We need to talk about last night. Things got a little heated. The next voicemail was Dad's. This is ridiculous. You're being dramatic. Call your mother back and we'll straighten this out. Madison's message came last, her tone breezy, annoyed, already irritated that I hadn't instantly complied. Don't ignore me. The dealer called and asked about the cosigner paperwork. I told Jeremy I'd have the car today. I deleted all 3 messages and blocked their numbers before I even left my apartment. For the first time in my life, I walked into work without the invisible leash of my family tugging at my thoughts. I told myself I'd done the right thing, that silence was necessary, that this was what boundaries felt like. I didn't realize yet that to my family, boundaries weren't limits. They were a challenge. Around noon, my office phone rang. Annie Dennis's office, I answered automatically, slipping into my professional tone. Oh, thank God. Mom said, you blocked us. How could you do that to your own family? I closed my eyes, a sigh catching in my throat. I'm at work, I said carefully. I can't talk about personal issues. This is personal, she snapped. This is about Madison's car. The dealership called this morning. You're embarrassing her. She already promised her friends she'd have it today. Something inside me hardened. I told you last night, I said, my voice firm. I'm not co-signing anything. I hung up. My hands shook as I called the front desk and asked them to block all personal calls from being transferred to my extension. My supervisor glanced at me from across the office, concern flickering across her face. I forced a smile and pretended nothing was wrong. The harassment didn't stop. For 3 days, my phone stayed dark except for unknown numbers lighting it up like fireworks. They recruited everyone, extended relatives, old family friends, even Mrs. Patterson, our former neighbor, who left me a voicemail about family duty and how disappointed your parents must be. Every message followed the same script. I was selfish. Madison was fragile. Family stuck together no matter what. By Thursday, I was exhausted, not physically, but emotionally. I felt like I was being hunted, cornered by expectations that refused to die just because I'd stopped feeding them. Then Madison crossed the line. I was heading out for lunch when I spotted her standing in the lobby of my office building, leaning casually against the reception desk like she belonged there. She looked immaculate. Designer jeans, leather jacket, a fresh blowout. New purchases, no doubt, paid for with money my parents somehow always seemed to have when it came to her. There you are, she said brightly when she saw me. I was hoping we could grab lunch and clear up this silly misunderstanding. The receptionists watched us with open curiosity. A few coworkers slowed their steps, sensing drama the way people always do. There's no misunderstanding, I said quietly, my voice devoid of emotion. I'm not signing your car loan. Her smile tightened just for a second. Don't be ridiculous, she laughed, trying to sound breezy. You're my sister. I'm not, I said. You made that clear when you hit me, and Mom and Dad threw me out. She waved a dismissive hand. It was just a little slap. You've always been so sensitive. The word sensitive landed like a slap of its own. Madison, I said, my voice low and controlled, a warning in every syllable. You need to leave. If you show up here again, I'll call security. You wouldn't dare, she said, but her eyes flickered. Try me. I walked past her toward the parking garage. She followed, her heels clicking fast as she tried to keep up. You're ruining everything, she hissed. I already told Jeremy about the car. What am I supposed to say now? Tell him the truth, I said, unlocking my car door. That you expected me to pay for something you can't afford, and I said no. Her voice cracked. But I need it. My Honda is embarrassing. What will people think? I paused, my hand on the door handle. For just a moment, a flicker of something like pity almost surfaced. Then I remembered the slap, the blood on my lip, my parents' cold faces as they chose her over me without hesitation. Figure it out, I said, my voice flat, like the rest of us adults do. I drove away, leaving her standing alone in the sterile silence of the parking garage. That weekend, I packed a small bag and drove north to clear my head. I rented a tiny cabin near the lake. No cell service, no expectations. I hiked, read, slept. For the first time in years, my thoughts were truly my own. That peace lasted exactly 48 hours. Sunday evening, my phone rang. Miss Dennis, a calm female voice said. This is Detective Alvarez with the County Sheriff's Department. I'm calling regarding your parents. My blood turned to ice. What happened? I asked, a frantic chill creeping up my spine. Are they okay? They're physically fine, she said gently, but they've been arrested on charges of embezzlement and fraud. The world tilted. What? We found your contact information in their emergency documents, she continued. We need you to come in to answer some questions. The drive back felt unreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. My parents, boring, predictable, rule-following arrested? It simply didn't make sense. At the station, Detective Alvarez led me into a small interview room that smelled like stale coffee and disinfectant. Your parents have been under investigation for about 18 months, she explained, opening a thick folder. We received multiple tips from your father's company about irregularities in client accounts. She laid out the evidence slowly. False claims, altered documents, money siphoned off over years. How much? I asked, my voice barely audible, a growing sense of dread consuming me. Approximately $850,000. My chest tightened, a cold not forming in my stomach. And the money, she continued, sliding bank statements across the table, was largely transferred into accounts under your sister's name. Designer purchases, luxury trips, expensive restaurants, Madison's life. It all clicked into place. The endless money, the audacious confidence, the unshakable entitlement. It was all a lie. Did she know? I asked, my voice hollow. She claims she didn't, the detective said carefully. Says she thought your parents were just being generous. I let out a hollow, bitter laugh. There's one more thing, Detective Alvarez added. Your sister has been calling the station. She wants you to help with legal fees and living expenses. Of course she did. I won't, I said immediately without a second thought. The detective nodded. That's probably wise. When I got home, my phone was flooded again. Unknown numbers, frantic messages. That night, my doorbell rang hard. I looked through the peephole and saw Madison standing there, mascara streaked, hair messy, raw panic written all over her face. Against my better judgment, I opened the door but kept the chain locked. I need you to help me, she said, skipping any pretense. I need a lawyer for Mom and Dad, and I still need you to co-sign for my car. I stared at her, truly stunned. Our parents were arrested for stealing money to fund your lifestyle, I said, my voice quiet, almost mournful. And you're still talking about a car? "That's not my fault," she snapped, her eyes blazing. "I didn't know." "You never asked," I said quietly, the truth hanging heavy in the air. Her voice broke then. "I don't know how to do this on my own." For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes that wasn't a performance. But I also saw years of damage, none of which I had caused. "Maybe it's time you learn," I said. I closed the door. She pounded on it for 10 minutes before finally leaving. I sank to the floor, shaking, knowing one thing with absolute clarity. This wasn't over. The months that followed blurred together into a dizzying cycle of court dates, depositions, and long stretches of waiting that somehow felt heavier than the chaos that had come before. My parents were formally charged within weeks. Fraud, embezzlement, multiple counts. Seeing their names in black and white legal documents felt unreal. Like reading about strangers who just happened to share my last name. The house I grew up in was raided. Accounts were frozen. Assets flagged for seizure. Everything they'd built, or rather, stolen, collapsed under the weight of evidence they couldn't explain away. Madison, on the other hand, adapted. She always did. Within days of the arrest, she stopped calling me directly and started telling her story to anyone who would listen. At first, it was family members, then friends of friends, then suddenly, strangers. She launched a blog titled Surviving Family Betrayal. The first post went viral in our small community. In it, she described herself as a devoted daughter blindsided by her parents' crimes, abandoned by an emotionally distant sister who turned her back during the darkest moment of our lives. She wrote about betrayal, grief, and resilience. She wrote about learning independence for the first time. She did not mention quitting her job. She did not mention demanding I fund her lifestyle. She did not mention the slap. Reading it felt like watching someone wear my skin and tell my story backward. Local news outlets picked it up, then regional blogs. She did interviews where she spoke softly, dressed modestly, her voice trembling just enough to sound authentic. She talked about therapy, about rebuilding, about finding strength after trauma. The prosecutor positioned her as a victim, too, and legally she was. At trial, Madison testified that she had no knowledge of where the money came from, that she believed our parents were simply being generous, that she trusted them the way children trust parents. The jury believed her. Dad was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. Mom received 2 years plus probation. Madison walked out free. I sat in the back of the courtroom, hands folded in my lap, feeling nothing but a strange, hollow quiet. No vindication, no anger, just a profound, unsettling certainty. I never posted a rebuttal. I never corrected the record. For a brief moment, I considered it. Typing out the truth, attaching photos of my split lip, screenshots of her demands, timestamps of calls. But I realized something important before I hit publish. Defending myself would keep me trapped in her orbit forever. Silence, for once, was power. Instead, I disappeared. I took the vacation I'd been postponing for years and flew to Japan, wandering quiet streets where no one knew my name or my history. I learned how to cook dishes that took hours, not minutes. I joined a hiking group through work. I signed up for painting classes and discovered I liked acrylics more than watercolors. My weekends became truly mine. No crisis calls, no guilt, no sudden financial emergencies. 6 months after sentencing, my boss called me into her office. "We've noticed something," she said, smiling. "Your focus, your creativity. You're different in a good way." I was promoted to senior marketing director that afternoon. With the raise came something I'd never really had before. Disposable income that stayed mine. I bought a townhouse in a quiet neighborhood with a small garden and a sunlit office. I hosted a housewarming party with friends who knew me as Annie, not Madison's sister. No one asked questions I didn't want to answer. That was when the messages started shifting. Extended relatives who'd once lectured me about loyalty began apologizing. Some admitted they'd noticed inconsistencies in Madison's narrative. Her Instagram didn't quite match her hardship. Expensive dinners, weekend trips, wine tastings with her boyfriend, Jeremy, the same man she never mentioned in interviews. I listened politely. I didn't engage. I was done being the family's emotional landfill. Therapy helped me understand why. My therapist put it plainly one afternoon. You were the shock absorber. Every time there was tension, you were expected to absorb it so everyone else could stay comfortable. The realization hurt, but it also freed me. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't selfish. I was done enabling. About a year after the trial, Madison called me from an unfamiliar number. I recognized her voice instantly. I know you're angry, she said carefully, but I really didn't know they were doing anything illegal. Okay, I said. There was a pause. Okay, that's it. What do you want me to say? Things are tight. Jeremy can't support both of us forever. I need help getting back on my feet. There are programs for that, I said calmly. You're an adult. She tried one last angle. People are talking, she warned. They think you abandoned your family. I almost smiled. I don't care, I said. I'm living my life. She went quiet. I blocked the number. I heard later that she and Jeremy broke up, that she was working full-time now, that she was finally learning how rent worked. Good. 2 years have passed. Sometimes I see her at the grocery store. We nod. We don't speak. People still ask if I regret cutting them off completely. The honest answer is this. I miss the family I believed I had. But I don't miss the manipulation, the entitlement, or the way love was always conditional on how much I was willing to sacrifice. For the first time in my life, I'm not a backup plan. I'm not a financial solution. I'm not the shock absorber for everyone else's bad choices. I'm just Annie Dennis, a woman who knows her worth and refuses to trade it for approval ever again. Some stories end with forgiveness. This one ends with peace.